You're listening to Switched On Australia, the podcast that tracks the opportunities and challenges of the renewable energy transition and electrifying everything everywhere. Switched On is proudly brought to you by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. Switched On is also brought to you by Goodwe, the all-in-one ESA battery system safely powering Aussie homes, lowering bills and providing energy independence. And Switched On is also brought to you by Amp Control, an Australian manufacturer helping to power the energy transition. Welcome back to Switched On Australia. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for joining me. Electrifying our homes isn't always straightforward, as many of you I'm sure know. But for the millions of Australians who live in apartments, there's added layers of complexity. If you want to install solar, a battery, a heat pump or even an EV charger, you may need to use parts of the building that you don't actually own. There's the roof, basement, switchboards, service ducts or even the space between your apartment and your own car park. Which brings the owner's corporation and often the strata manager into the equation. And without some understanding of what it takes, projects can easily stall before anyone has established whether they're technically possible. Residents might assume their owner's corporation won't approve upgrades or they'll be reluctant to spend money investigating what's possible. Potentially viable projects can simply end up in the too hard basket. Ash Sayers is the director of Keystone. They're a strata management company which manages around 4,000 residences across some 300 owners' corporations in Melbourne. Ash is very pro-electrification, but as you'll hear, the role of strata managers isn't to decide whether a building should electrify. It's the owners who have to drive those decisions. But a knowledgeable strata manager can still play a crucial role in the energy transition for apartment owners. Ash Sayers, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Anne. It's good to be here.
Ash, I just want you to start by just giving me a bit of an overview of why apartment buildings are proving so hard to electrify.
I guess the main thing is that demand's coming now with a lot more electric cars hitting the market. And when you've got the crossover between people's private property versus what's common property, and they don't necessarily have the rights to just run cables across the various areas of the apartment building to get power to where they want it, it's thrown a lot of roadblocks for owners to be able to get these projects completed.
And what about just generally with other consumer energy resources? You know, I'm talking solar, I'm talking getting off gas, I'm talking putting in the batteries, because they're also not that easy to do in an apartment block.
Yeah, so it's where we've got a crossover between the common property, which is owned by the owners corporation, which is the collective of owners, versus private property. So for example, if you take into account just a normal standalone house, and if you want to put solar on your roof, there's nobody you need to ask. You just engage the contractor and you put the solar on your roof. You might have an apartment building that's got 20 apartments in it, and if you'd like to put solar on the roof, depending on the plan of subdivision and the boundaries, um, the roof could be owned by the 19 other owners and yourself, and you need to get their permission to be able to put the solar on the roof to be able to then feed into your apartment. So there's ways that it can be done. It's not that it can't be done, but there's a few things that people need to go through first, and owners and committees need to be open-minded about the process as well.
Are you finding that a lot of owners just go, you know, they put their hands up and go, oh, it's all too hard? Or are you finding that, you know, some of the owners' corporations are just saying that's all too hard?
Yeah, I guess that there's got to be a bit of investment up front to find out if it's even possible that it can be done, because a lot of the buildings, definitely ones that were built pre sort of 2020, when electrification was really starting to become paramount, a lot of buildings might not even have the ability to have this type of infrastructure installed within it. Whereas you might get lucky and your building does have the ability, but until you invest the money to get a a report done, an investigation done to know if it can be done, um, you don't know. So then you just sit on your hands and nothing happens.
Are you finding that a lot of residents want to get those reports, or are they balking at that first hurdle?
I'm finding a lot of residents are asking specifically about EV charging and how that they can get power into their own car park more so than solar on the building. But once you talk about the costs and the process, a lot of people go, it's just too hard. Um, when it's really it's not that expensive and it's not that hard to do.
You're talking about the assessment, that first stage that you emphasise is needed. You're saying that that's not too expensive?
That's not too expensive and not too hard. And then even the next stage of saying, if you can get it ticked off and say, yeah, we can actually do this project, here's how we would do it. Other than the install cost, which I don't know, it will be case specific, but the administrative side of it that runs through the strata and the owners corporation, that's actually quite straightforward.
How much influence do you reckon strata managers actually have over whether these projects proceed?
Uh, very, very little. And it's actually not the strata manager's role to have influence over any project proceeding. So um, it's the role of the committee and the owners to have the vision that they want for their building and to develop their vision. And it's the owners corporation manager's role to inform them on whether that's achievable or not. Now, if the committee then do decide that they want to proceed and they can proceed with electrification, it's the owners corporation manager's role to run that process through and hold them through what needs to be done and execute it. But it's not really the owners corporation manager's role to actively seek out projects that they may not want to have done.
Do you find though that residents often just assume that the owners corporation or the strata corporation won't approve it? Do you think that's a like a common perception?
Yeah, I do. I think it falls into a bit of a too hard basket. Um, and where it can really fall away is if you don't have a committee of owners that are engaged. So, um, and there's no qualifications to get onto a committee for an owners corporation. So you do end up with a mixed bag of people, which is good because you get representatives of all sorts of across the building. But if things start to get confusing and in depth, then it becomes a challenge to get a committee to make a decision because there's a lot of fear around making the wrong decision and putting costs on people that they might not necessarily get a benefit from. And so there is a lot of fear, and it's a bit of a, um, well, better the devil you know than the devil you don't, and just do nothing.
Yes. And how do you think that owners corporations can actually assist once you've got some champions, some residents who want to champion the electrification process? What can they do to help that drive it?
Communication. It's always communication and understanding amongst residents and of what it is that we're trying to achieve and what's the vehicle that we're going to use to get there. So let's say, for example, um, an owners corporation gets a feasibility study done. They can install solar. They can install battery, EV charging as well, and they go and get it all costed and they start to talk about the different funding options. Now they need to be able to work with the manager to explain that and create some documentation and collateral that can be sent out to the residents so they can know and make an informed decision. But the residents and more so lot owners, sorry, rather than residents, they need to be also open minded and know that you might not want this now, but it's going to increase the value of your property and someone may want it in 5 to 10 years' time, and it could be too late by the time that you do it. The building's already fallen behind. Having a mindset of being a custodian of a building rather than being the owner in part of the building is a good mental shift in having people how they think about how we maintain, how we capital improve this building so that we can future proof it and have it as a long term asset.
And what mistakes do you think that residents and even owners corporations are making when they try to start some of these projects?
First mistake is that people just go ahead and get a dodgy electrician to do it, and they they run basically private property power across property that they don't own.
Right.
Um, so that's the first mistake. I'd say if anyone's telling you you can do that, always check with the owner's corporation manager first. Uh, I think the biggest mistake though that committees and lot owners are making is that they assume that the strata manager is driving this and driving these types of visions of the word that I'd use for it for their buildings when it's just not um, it's not in our scope of works, and it's not something that we genuinely have the time to do for every single building that we manage.
Nevertheless, it still requires the owner corporations to have some knowledge, because if you're being approached by residents who want to electrify, the administrator who
Yeah.
is managing the building, surely they need more knowledge in order to understand what the residents are trying to achieve.
They do, and unless you've got a proactive manager who's out there actually seeking what can be done in this space, it's just not being readily made available for people to know. There's not really any training around that's being run on it. Like for the projects that we've done, it's only through working with a contractor that we've been able to really nut it out and go, okay, there is a path forward here that we can do. And then the managers in our team, if they're having the annual general meeting or a committee meeting, they let the owners know that they are options there if they do raise it. But we can't, and we have no authority to deliver or incur costs on a project that the owners haven't asked us to do. So we can't really jump the gun and say we know this is going to be better for you. Just um, let us do what we want to do. But we're unfortunately not able to do that.
Can we look at some of the buildings that you oversee and that have tried to electrify? Give me a couple of examples of how they did it, looking at the opportunities that they now have, but also the challenges in doing those transitions.
Yeah, I've got a really good case study, but I'll start with one that was um, a setback before we come to the good case study, which was a property on Wellington Parade in Melbourne, and they wanted to upgrade for EV charging within their building. Got a feasibility study done, have the ability to run the infrastructure through their building. They don't have the ability to put solar on their apartment building due to the lack of roof space, and the offset wouldn't have been worth it anyway. But the challenge I had, there wasn't enough power in the street. So
In the street, not necessarily the building, in the street.
correct, yeah. So the building has been built, and the infrastructure can provide for it. We can do all the license agreements internally, and we can chat about them more a bit later. But we can do all the documentation from an owners corporation's perspective. But even if we were able to do it all and turn it on, there's not enough power coming in from the street. So unfortunately, in that situation, you have a building that has the ability to have the infrastructure. You have a committee and a group of owners who are wanting for it, but and there's not enough energy in the street being generated to come in.
Right, and you found that out pretty early on when you got a good electrician on board, I presume.
Yeah, they had someone come in to do a feasibility study for that one, and that's when it said the boxes were tick tick tick, but then the main one, where's the power come from? That it was across. So um, I'm not fully across and what local government's doing or even energy providers are in terms of trying to increase what's coming through the grid. But unfortunately for that one, it was a, a project that couldn't proceed because there just wasn't enough power out there.
Before we look at a couple of the successful case studies, how much of an issue is it in some of the buildings that actually do want to electrify that there just isn't enough power in the street?
That was the one and only time that it's come up, but I haven't had, like, we haven't had just many committees who are running for it because the first hurdle is that they don't wanna invest the money to get a, feasibility study done.
Okay, give me a successful example of how a building electrified.
Yeah, so we took over management of an owners corporation in Toorak, and it was 5 apartment buildings where they had looked at this project previously about, full electrification, which they wanted to get solar, battery, and EV charging done through their building. And they got told by the previous manager that it couldn't be done. And during the AGM, someone sort of just mentioned it as a throwaway comment, and I was having a look at the plans. I was like, I actually think this can be done at this property. So we engaged a
What
company
what
called.
what made you think that it could be done, Ash?
Uh, so I'm a plumber by trade. So I have a construction background. So I have, just a bit of an understanding of how the buildings are when they're put together. And it just didn't make sense to me that looking at the building, why it couldn't be done.
Right,
Yeah, it
right.
was simple as that.
Okay. Ok
Yeah.
okay, so then you engaged a feasibility study?
Yeah, so we engaged All Electric Homes was the company that we work with, and we spoke to the owners. So we spoke to all the 5 owners. They were all on board, and that is the biggest point, is that the owners were on board with this. And we uh, got All Electric Homes to go out, do a feasibility study. Uh, they designed the whole program and had it all costed for each individual apartment within the building. We then we arranged for a town hall with those 5 owners and Trent from All Electric Homes to present and explain how it can be done. Once Trent presented to the owners corporation how it could be done, the costings, he dropped off the call, and then I talked through with the owners about how it can be done from a owners corporation's perspective, where the roof was technically common property, so everybody collectively owns that. But what we're trying to do is put private assets on the roof, which is the solar arrays, the solar panels to collect the energy. Um, Once we worked through all that, the owners decided whether they wanted to opt in or opt out. Even with the government rebates, there was still going to be significant cost to the owners. What ended up happening is 2 decided to proceed with it, and the other 3 opted not to. But what we're able to do is then through talking with the owners and hand holding them through the process, we're able to pass what's called a special resolution, and had the owners agree to license some of the roof area to allow private lot owners to put their own solar panels on the roof. And then what happens is we also licensed areas within the service ducts and then across the basements into their private apartments. So anywhere where somebody's private cabling or battery or solar panel touch common property, we now drew up a license that allowed them to cover across that land. And then that's how it was able to be done.
It sounds like, you actually were driving that project. Am I right? Or was it were there a couple of champions within the block?
The terminology is probably pretty important when we're talking about this. So the owners were driving it, and we were the vehicle to deliver it. So we're basically the GPS in the process, and we're coordinating between the contractor and the owners. But if the owners turn around to us and say, we don't want this anymore, then we just have to stop. But because the owners were driving us to say, hey, we want to get this done, then we were pushing on and getting it done what we needed to do.
You've got the license then to coordinate and proceed
Yep. Yep.
and to contract out to people like Trent at All Electric.
Correct. And something else that's definitely worth mentioning, though, is all of that was not part of standard day-to-day owners corporation management. So we had spoken with the owners and said, look, this sits outside of what is within your scope of standard management services. So there will be an additional fee for us to do this, which they agreed to. But I think another common misconception is that um, you pay your management fees and everything just gets done, and it's not the case. So, but in saying that, it wasn't super expensive. I think the total fees that they would charge for us to see this project all the way through, including site meetings and everything, was under the $1,000.
Okay, we'll be right back after this message from one of our sponsors.
G'day, Alex Carey here, proud ambassador for GoodWe. The GoodWe ESA 3060 all-in-one commercial solution is available now from GoodWe wholesalers. With a massive 50 kilowatt hours of the battery eligible for the federal rebate, it's the perfect solution for small businesses. The commercial energy storage range from GoodWe is growing, with more models launching soon. Visit goodwe.com.au for more information or contact the local GoodWe team.
My guest today on Switched On Australia is Ash Sayers, the director of Keystone, a strata management company in Melbourne. And we're talking about the role strata managers can play in the electrification of apartment buildings. I was wondering, just going back to that issue about the capacity, the power, the energy capacity of a building, something that has struck me is that people may get one electrician saying that, a building doesn't have the capacity, but another one will try and do a workaround, and that might be managing the load, the energy load of the building, bring in smart chargers or, stage electrification. How much of that do you think can play a role in apartments electrifying?
Yeah, I think it's massive, part of it. Like, we've had some feasibility done where they do, and I'm not an electrician, I don't fully get the terminology and how it all works, but we have had to look at whether they can load things differently across different phases to try and do a workaround to get it into the building. Um, we have also looked at the possibility of, um, public EV charging, so not open to the public, but within the building where you can come and park your car and charge there and then move it off and, be charged in idling time if you don't move your car. And so they have also looked at load sharing across EV chargers. So if you do have, say 10 apartments all with EV chargers and we can't run them all at the same time, there are mechanisms that will sacrifice, um, certain other appliances or charges to allow another one to charge, or because what you don't want to have is 10 people plug in their car and then they can't use their apartments because they've got no power. So that there are mechanisms that they're trying to do to work around so that there is some load sharing and it can still be done, but just not at capacity.
Now, you, I believe, are involved with the City of Yarra apartment electrification project. Tell
Yeah,
me what
yeah.
what's all that about?
That that's I think where a lot of councils need to head in this direction. And what that is doing is that City of Yarra have committed a certain amount of money to put forward these feasibility studies and cover the costs so that owners corporations can find this information out for free. So it's the first step forward in being able to start this project. And it's also getting over the biggest hurdle, which is the first one where people don't want to invest the money to find out they can't do something. So what this is giving, is owners corporation within the City of Yarra's, region, the ability to engage with all electric homes, and they can come out and assess the building and give them a report to say whether their building would service, this type of infrastructure. And if so, then they can work on what needs to be done next. That's when you'd bring the owner's corporation manager into the conversation. But they get that at no cost. And that's what City of Yarra is offering for them.
That's fantastic. And what do you hope we'll learn from the first buildings that get those feasibility studies done?
I think it'd be great to see, even if it picks up just a handful where you can get full, solar and battery options into these buildings, or even, just replacing, old gas hot water units with electric heat pumps. If it can identify some of these buildings and it gets them willing to now take the next step to get off the gas and electrify, I think it's going to be a good outcome.
So you'd like to see this become a model for other councils around Australia?
Well, my understanding is that a lot of, councils have got pressures now about, the targets that they need to hit with net zero and things like that. And they need to somehow incentivize the apartment buildings to take these steps forward. Um, if education's one piece, well, that's great. This is why we're putting these seminars on that we're now doing with City of Yarra. Uh, but then there's the financial hurdle. If they can just get over that first step, and then we can put together a feasibility study, have it assessed, we can see what the return on investment period is. The owners corporation manager can talk to the owners about how they can fund this. It's a big step forward.
Ash, I'm wondering, how did you get involved in this? What motivated you initially to get involved with the energy transition from your position managing owners corporations?
Uh, so it all started with that first property on Wellington Parade where it was knocked back, and then it was about trying to find different ways that we could still make this work and overcome the challenges of it. It's almost been a bit of a nerd on strata process, I guess. But then once we connected with all electric homes and were able to really go, they said, well, look, we can make this work from an infrastructure point of view. How can we make this work from a legality for the owners corporations? It was a bit of a no-brainer to get involved and try and help find a path forward. But then the end result is seeing the savings that are also coming through for the owners, which that's always good to see as well.
Tell me though, if you were asked, and I am going to ask you, what's one change that you would like to see? You know, whether it's legislation, regulations, industry practice, strata changes, or just general culture. What would you like to see change that would unlock the biggest wave of apartment electrification?
I think from an owners corporation's perspective, the process that has to be followed to get this implemented is right, and I think it's strong because it does protect the owners corporation as a whole, which is a democracy. But in terms of being able to incentivize owners corporations to get this done, it's always a financial problem. So what I'd like to see happen is if we could get more councils on board with getting these feasibilities so owners can know where they stand and they have a document that can help them make an informed decision. But then if they want to then proceed to the next stage, I think that there needs to be some sort of government funding or contribution to be able to ease the cost of getting the owners, because that's the only thing. Once owners are informed and they understand the process and you have a manager that can help deliver the process, the only inhibitor is financial.
Yes, right. Just a final question. As apartment buildings push to adopt EV charging, rooftop solar, batteries, heat pumps, demand flexibility, strata managers are increasingly going to become the people coordinating an apartment building's energy transition. Do you think that they can become energy managers in addition to them being building administrators?
In short, I'd say no. And there are already companies out there that do that type of work, which are the embedded network management companies. And I think they're the ones that would be, it's a branch off in their type of scope more so than it is the branch in ours. So it's like, for example, with you might have your embedded network provider that you pay your electricity through. If there's a shared EV charging, you still have your account registered with them. You tap your fob on the EV charger, and then you get your bill through those. So it's not really something that I think an owners corporation manager would be driving and administering, but there are embedded network providers, which is where I think they need to branch out into this space.
I wonder whether or not there's a new role there, because not everybody wants to join an embedded network, do they?
No, well, it's tricky. Maybe there is. We have spoken with all electric homes about this sort of this management system to try and manage public EV charging within an apartment building. Haven't found the solution yet, purely because our knowledge is just limited to owners' corporations.
Yeah, sounds like you've got enough on your plate, Ash. Ash Sayers, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
Thanks, Anne. It's great to be here.
And Ash Sayers is the director of Keystone, a strata management company that manages some 4,000 residences across 300 buildings in Melbourne. And if you are in Melbourne, Ash will be talking at an apartment electrification information session being run by the wonderful community energy group Electrifying. That's next week on Tuesday, the 18th of August. You can find details on the Electrifying website. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next week. Switched On Australia was proudly brought to you by AMP Control, an Australian manufacturer combining engineering expertise, electrical solutions and innovative technologies to enable Australia's energy future. Switched On Australia is also proudly brought to you by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. And Switched On Australia was also brought to you by GoodWe. GoodWe's all-in-one ESA home battery helps Australians store more of their own solar energy and rely less on the grid. With strong local support and technology already trusted in thousands of homes, GoodWe is making the switch to electrification simpler and more affordable. GoodWe is proud to work with Australian cricketer and GoodWe ambassador Alex Carey. Find out more at goodwe.com.au.